Okay, I guess we can get started. So we're just gonna go over this quickly. We're gonna have the agenda is like we're gonna start with introductions. We're gonna like what we shipped this month, do a few demos, what our plan is, and go through finally the Q&A. I know a lot of you have already met us, but for those of you who have not met us, you can see our team is greatly expanding. We're all over the place. And most, if not all of us, are on the CNCF channel, so feel free to just say hello. Okay, for folks who are new here or who are not new but would like to reintroduce themselves, please like your name, where you are, what the company is, why are you working with OpenFGA, are you in production, are you just starting, anything to share? Now's the time.
Okay, I'll go first. Arek Kamiński again. I'm Chicago. Company is Redmain. We are working on improving our authorization or access to how we access the data or ensure that they see the data that they should see. So right now, this is the in application in .NET using the SQL and so on. So we want to decouple the authorization component from the filtering, from the authentication of the stuff, and have us as a separate component. We're not in production. This is the kind of investigation, a POC step right now, and the OpenFGA was kind of, for me, popped up as one of the first options because I did check the CNCF for the recommendations. So that's why I'm here. I already have my model, and it's now the benchmarking, what we can do with that benchmarking, with the performance of the OpenFGA.
That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, you mentioned you have questions, so like at the end we definitely will, or not definitely, but most likely we're gonna have some extra time today, so we can go through a lot more questions.
So, okay,
Hi. So I'll go on with my introduction as that's the first meeting I'm joining. I actually know OpenFGA for maybe like a week or something, like deep diving in it. So my name is Laurent. I'm based in France, and my company name is Locala. It's a bit more global. So we have offices also in the US and in Canada. I'm mainly taking a look at OpenFGA because I'm kind of feeling constrained with our current implementation of authorization. We're using Keycloak, and so everything is done with the client resource server. So we have like resources, scopes, permissions, policies there. But it's not very flexible. It requires a lot of work to have some maybe complex use cases. And I was kind of, let's say, charmed by the Reback approach. Yeah, I'm kind of pushing for this in my company. I think we're going to go this way. The few discussions that I've had with the people that are involved in this are quite promising. So yeah, we'll be probably working with OpenFGA start of next year, I guess.
Perfect. Like, would love to see your journey as you get more and more into OpenFGA.
Yeah, you'll probably hear a lot of me on the Slack. I mean, I do not hesitate to ask questions when there is something I don't understand or I need to know. So I'll definitely share my experience too.
You mentioned Keycloak also, just in case you haven't found it yet, like one of our community members has published like an integration between OpenFGA and Keycloak, so you might be interested in that too.
I saw an article, I guess that's what you're talking about. So yeah, I saw the article of the integration between Keycloak and OpenFGA. So yeah, I've looked into this. I'll probably dig a bit more into this also. And we're probably going to do some kind of the way I see it, some kind of store that is going to take data both from Keycloak and from our various applications to have like one global store to handle our authorizations.
Sweet. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? Speak now or hold your peace for just one. Jace.
Yeah, I'm Jace. I work at Zapier. We're not using OpenFGA, we're using FGA, but so many of the open source tools are the same across both. So I love attending these meetings to learn about how people are using these things because, yeah, applies there as well. And yeah, we're using FGA in production in several of our production systems.
And Jace definitely is a good person to ask for experiences in production. He's been a big part of deploying like the FGA pieces in Zapier. So if you want like user stories, how hard was it? He's definitely the guy to reach out to.
You need to pronounce it like Zapier, not Zapier.
I always miss that.
Zapier makes you happier. That's the way to remember.
All right, going once, going twice. Sold. All right. Moving on. So this month we just shipped mainly on the OpenFGA server, the core server part. We shipped 2 releases. The 1.8 is like a meaty release. You'll see the initial version of batch check support. Sorry. I know you've all been asking. Excuse me. You've all been asking about like, we have batch check on the SDKs. When are we bringing it to the server? So batch check on the server allows you to send multiple tuples in one go and like let it respond to all of them. We saw like some people ask for even additional features like oh, I want all the checks to pass and things like this. Definitely we're taking that feedback, and although we haven't started working on it, Andres has added it to the roadmap, so it will be coming over the next X amount of years. But we definitely want feedback like that. So like once you start trying OpenFGA, the batch check endpoint, do let us know what you think. For it and the next 3 items, SDK support is not yet released, so we're releasing that soonish. Don't take my word for like what soonish means because we're over the holidays, but like by early, like sometime next year, we would have support for all 3 in the SDKs. And we're definitely looking for your feedback regarding the API, regarding the SDKs, regarding whatever modeling. Give us your feedback. Another part was the support for contextual tuples expand. That was a community contributions. Thank you so much to Sujita. And yeah, OpenFGA is open source. You want something? If it aligns with what everyone else wants, please do contribute it. It makes it much better for everyone else, and it makes it faster for you to get what you're looking for. One thing we also added in the is the rechanges API. So before, in order to do rechanges, you would have to go back to the beginning of time. Recently, we're like, some people for auditing reasons or for whatever, they just want to see starting from a particular period in time, and it was not really a pleasant experience to start from scratch when you have billions of changes, like of tuple changes. So now we added the like we can add a start time when you're calling the rechanges, and we'll start serving changes from that period of time. We'll still send you a continuation token so you can keep iterating and get all the changes. We've also released some really important experimental performance improvements for check specifically. So you should start seeing better improvements in check if you enable the experimental flag. However, as always, we'd like to stress that please do not use experimental features in production. So try it out on a testing environment, on whatever environment, but like both the API interface for experimental features and like the guarantee of them being working as well as they should is not there. So try them out, but we don't like actually we strongly advise you not to use them in production. But if you do try them out, we do want your feedback. So if you do, we have many experiments happening. So if you try any of those, do let us know what you think about the experience, what could be better. If something is failing for you, something is confusing, do let us know. And on that note, like last month we released the experimental authorization feature, so access control feature. For those of you who have tried it, what did you think of it? Did it work for you? And how do you think about like how to bootstrap it? How would you like starting with it? Do let us know that sort of feedback. CNCF channel is open for you, or you can comment on the release notes anywhere. We're going to be reading it, but we definitely want feedback, especially like in general, but especially on experimental features. One more thing about like the OpenFGA 1.0, 1.8.0, if you're using it as a library, so not as an API, if you're using a library with your custom DB adapter, do note that we have some breaking changes there. They're noted out in the changelog, so if you check the changelog, you should see like they're not it's extensive, but you will see some breaking changes. The next release that we did was 1.8.1. It was a less meaty than 1.8.0 in general, but it followed up on a lot of the things happening in 1.8. So a lot of the performance improvements for the experimental check, a lot of other smaller bugs and fixes. So if you're not on 1.8.1, it's a good idea to update. As like you can see the note that's happening. We're focusing really much over the like the past few months and like moving like indefinitely, I think, on performance improvements, especially check list objects. We're never gonna reach the ideal node, but we hope to keep iteratively getting better and better and better. And your feedback, like with more use cases that are slow or not working or whatever, that helps us focus on getting those done. So but also like if you're noticing better latency, like share that. Like that's the sort of feedback we would like, and that's what we're concentrating on, especially of course on check. We had a minor release in the CLI with like small bug fixes. Again, thanks to 2 community members, and also thanks to a community member, we updated the IntelliJ plugin. It was not working with the latest versions of the IDE that we released. So a community member was helpful enough to go in and do that change for us. So thank you so much. Okay. We talked about all those releases. Now it's for some cool demo time. The demos, we have 2 demos for you today. Both are from like the folks from within the team, OpenFGA, and both are like part of the hackathon. We just had a like internal hackathon recently. And I'll let the folks introduce themselves and introduce the features. So to start with, Steve, you take it. This is very exciting.
Just going before Steve starts with the demo, I want to thank Jace for the idea, because like he asked for this feature at some moment and in one conversation we had, and now like Steven built it in a hackathon, so it's pretty cool.
Well, I hope this meets your expectations, Jace, of course. So, hi everyone, my name's Steve. I'm an engineer on the FGA team, and I'm based in the UK. And as mentioned, I've been working on a POC for support for mixins as part of a hackathon that we had last week. So I'm just going to dive in and show you what is going on here. If I can find the right window to share, I think it's this one. Here we go. So in my code window here, I have a rather contrived example of some types that you might have some common relations on. So I have a can view relation, can edit, and a parent on 2 different types. So with mixin support, you could potentially refactor these types in some way where you can pull them out into a common shared, what we call a mixin. And the syntax for that, if I just pull these out, is simply mixin. I give it a name, and then I can define some relations on that the same way I define it on a normal type. Paste those in, and come back to my type, and I can just include that mixin there. So that's how you can. That's essentially it. That's how you can start to share these common relations around multiple types. And I can come down to this one. I can include sharing here as well. And the way this works for all intents and purposes is very simple. It takes the DSL and we transform it to JSON internally as normal. With mixins, as part of that translation, they simply get inlined into the JSON just like any other relation. So any tools that kind of are based on working with that final JSON that we output should continue to work just as they would before. It's just that now in DSL, you can make it a little bit simpler by pulling these out. And we support a couple of different syntaxes as well. So if I wanted to define another one here, I'm just going to call it parent and put this one on as well. So I can do a couple of different examples. So one way I could include this is by including it as another mixin. So you can obviously have multiple on a type that way. I also went ahead and kind of investigated a more concise syntax where you can include them just on one line, comma separated like that. So if you've got a few, it's just a bit more concise. The highlighting doesn't work on this one. Just it will do. It's still kind of working that out as part of the hack. There's still a couple of things a little bit not quite right. But also one of the things that I wanted to do was, this type of thing has to be quite, at least in my opinion, has to be quite robust. So a lot of the hack was spent on working out some error cases as well. For example, if you try to include the same mixin twice, it will present you an error saying it's already included. If you try to define a relation with the same name as something you've included, we can detect that as well. And it will tell you exactly which kind of mixin it's come from. The ordering here doesn't matter, so you can put it wherever you want. You can't declare the same mixin twice, for example. You get an error there as well. So there's those kind of things we're trying to look at as well. Just make sure that you can't do something silly with mixins. What else? The things that don't quite work. For example, I demoed this to the team the other day, and one of the questions was, well, does it support conditions? And syntactically, it supports conditions, but when you try to do something with them, it doesn't yet compile. It also doesn't quite work with modular models right now. It will probably work in the same file, but if you try to include it across a different file, then we haven't accounted for that at all just yet. But I can imagine that being quite useful, where maybe you've got a file with just your mixins in it that you then include elsewhere. So that would be like a very useful use case that we could go ahead and look at as well. There's like a very basic POC to get something like this working. It's functional right now. It does work. There's a lot of tidy up to do, but yeah, essentially proves the case that we could get it working. Any questions?
I saw Gerline had a comment in the chat around so okay, like if we have this, if you have a large enough model, it can quickly get out of hand. So can we add like a flag in the CLI and the VS Code to and the playground probably to expand this, to show the expanded version?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd imagine we could do the as I mentioned, transforming from the DSL to the JSON just inlines all these relations. So And we include some metadata within that JSON so that we can get back to the original DSL if we want to. But again, that's a choice. We could absolutely add something into the CLI, for example, where, for store export, if I was to throw this into a store right now and do an export, I would see the kind of original or inline relations, because the CLI doesn't yet understand what a mixin is. So we would just get the original JSON out there. And we can make it understand, and we can also make it toggleable. So I would say that's possible, definitely.
Did you support for the CLI on this? Can you transform this to the actual JSON in the CLI
no,
or somehow?
Not right now.
Okay.
No, I didn't go as far as the CLI, but we do have the metadata there to get back to the DSL. So it's just a case of kind of understanding that.
Jace has a question too.
Yeah, first off, this is awesome. Just was kind of like share of why this is really useful for us is our team owns our FGA implementation, but we're helping other teams use it. Like we're a platform team that's helping other teams use it, and like we have a lot of products that we are wanting to onboard and limit the cognitive overload for teams to onboard, and this makes that a lot easier because I can like build a mixin for a specific feature set that we unlock in our centralized API and say like, hey, if you want to be able to use this group of APIs, add this mixin, you're good to go. And that's amazing. And it's also helps us a lot with consistency, because right now we have to manually do this across X number of different types, and it's a real manual process and people have to check it and view it. And so this is also wonderful. So I would love to see this just continue to evolve and expand. I think it would make model management a lot easier, because it's the deeper we go into integration, the more of a burden that becomes. One of the things that you showed here is how it throw an error when you redefined a check that is already in the mixin. But what if I wanted to override? I could see cases where it's like, well, for this one specific product, I need all these other relationships. I want to override it for this one. Is that something you're thinking about?
Definitely an interesting case. I wasn't thinking about that one specifically, but it does make sense. One of the things that we did think about that we could do, which is kind of inverse to what you're talking about, is maybe you only want to include one or two relationships from a mixin. The way we built it could potentially support something like, say for sharing, maybe I just want can edit, so I could do something like this. But that's kind of like the opposite for what you're wanting. You want everything but this one, maybe, or because you can override it somewhere else. But yeah, an override definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I could just see a couple cases where one product has a little bit of a nuance or something, or to disable something on one product to be able to override but get everything else.
Yeah, and you don't want to have to redefine the whole mixin
Right.
if you've got a lot of things in there. Yeah, definitely makes sense. Yeah, we'll take a note.
And yeah, Jace, like we're really interested in your thoughts in terms of how do you see this working with modular models, and especially like, with things like access control, because who owns the mixin? Is it going to be the team that the module where it's defined, or the module where it's used? Things like this are interesting to consider, and we're definitely looking for user feedback to help us like.
Well, it's interesting. I was kind of trying to do something kind of similar with modular models. I showed Andres this at Octane, where I was kind of trying to make something like this happen, where I was making modular models more based around like groupings of features instead of types, so that I could try to, hey, if you want to add this functionality, add it to this modular model to add these things. So it's kind of an organizational system of the features. And this would, just because we're having this problem of trying to simplify the model for our end users, internal users, but this would remove that, right? And then I could own, as the owner of our like centralized permission service, say like, hey, I own the mixin that unlocks all these things with various APIs, but you can own your type. And when you want to have that feature unlocked, you just add the mixin, but they can't change it. And that would, I think, be a greater impetus for us to have a bigger adoption of modular models, because it would allow us to control the things that we want to have them, you know, they don't need to know how it works. You know, we just control it. It's consistent for every single asset. It's the same. Yeah.
Thank you. And like we're hearing like Steve just in the chat, like people want, hey, why are you starting with one mixin? I want to have mixins of mixins. So next hackathon, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it the other day. There is potentially a use case for like nested mixins, which we could do. We find the right use case.
Yep. With maybe some limits, so you can't like infinitely nest.
Yeah.
But thanks so much, Steve, for this. And like thank you, Jace. Like, and this is why we'd love all of you to give us feedback. We're not always gonna be able to like do something fast, but like every use case you bring before us, we really do look into it. Andres specifically is gonna see how we can solve it. So, and it would turn out in hackathons and things like this, and we'll ideate on it. So both your ideas or your contributions are always welcome, and would lead us to try to adopt them and like try to figure out solutions for them. And thanks for the demo, Steve. Next we have Evan with, drum roll, you already see it, but drum roll, PHP SDK. Evan, would you like to take it from here?
Hey, sure thing. Let's see. Let me share my screen here. Alrighty. Well, thanks very much. I'm Evan. I'm an engineer on the FGA team, based out of the United States, a couple hours south of Chicago, actually. Little campus college town called Champaign-Urbana. It's lovely if you ever get a chance to go there. Come say hi. Yeah, so today I just wanted to talk a little bit about a project I worked on for the hackathon last week, experimental PHP SDK. If you ever get cornered by me at a meetup or a conference, you know I can talk your ear off about PHP. Since I came on the FGA team, I've been talking about PHP. Poor Andreas, I think his first experience with me was me chatting his ear off about how we need a PHP SDK. But it's just one of those languages I'm really passionate about, and I think it's just a tremendously vibrant developer community around it. And I know it's not the newest or shiniest thing. It's been around a long time, but I think a lot of people forget. A lot of the web runs on PHP. Of course, Facebook and Tumblr, but you've got Etsy, Spotify, Slack, of course, Wikipedia. Lots of big stuff runs on PHP still. And it's come a long way, especially thanks to Laravel in recent years. A lot of exciting stuff happening there. So, yeah, my PHP background, before I came on the FGA team, I owned the Auth0 SDKs for PHP. And yeah, I actually maintain a number of popular open source PHP libraries. So I know my way around PHP. It's been a part of my life for a while. But yeah, for FGA, well, when I came on, it's something I've always been eager to address. So thought the hackathon was a perfect opportunity to do that. So, yeah. So just to point out, this is experimental. It's brand new. It's from scratch. It's not anything we're branding like official OpenFGA SDK or anything like that right now. Community thing. But we'll see where things go. See what kind of feedback we get. But yeah, your feedback is greatly appreciated. So over those few days of the hackathon, this is what I came up with. I was aiming for a very minimal PHP SDK, just like bare essentials, and ended up actually getting like all the endpoints implemented, even getting client credential flow in there. So yeah, I was really happy how it turned out. It supports, I think most importantly, the PHP standard groups interoperability standards for networking. Those are PSR 7, 17, and 18, specifically around HTTP requests. So that's a very fancy way of saying if you're already using a networking library in your app, we're not going to force another hard dependency of something else on you, right? You can just plug in what you've got, and there's no extra overhead. So that plays into the 0 third-party dependencies I'm mentioning there. It's a very lightweight library, very, very simple to integrate. So like our other SDKs, a lot of it's generated from the OpenAPI generator, so it's really easy to maintain too, which is great. So just diving in, the installation or integration process is really simple. You install it using Composer, which is the standard PHP package manager. Just compose a require, and it lives under my GitHub namespace right now, Evan Sims OpenFGA-PHP. Now going into those standards again, if it's a brand new bare bones application, you don't have any other dependencies installed, you might need to install some libraries that meet those networking implementations I mentioned. This is a couple examples that would work, but there's tons to choose from in those URLs down there. And if you're using Laravel or Symfony, they're already there. You don't have to worry about it. So easy peasy. Importing and configuring the SDK is very much like other SDKs. You know, if you're using authentication, like here we've got client credential flow, you configure it in a configuration object, pass that to the client configuration, and then ultimately build your client with it. Pretty much the same as our other SDKs. Nothing new there. And that's it, really. Step 3, profit, I guess. You know, here's some example calls, but you know, go to the repo for the full API breakdown. If you've already used our SDKs, it'll look somewhat similar to what you're used to. Still tweaking the API a little bit to make it you know, line up with our other SDKs, but it's also a lot of PHP isms there that you know, might look a little different if you're not used to PHP. So there we're listing stores, creating a store, listing authorization models, and getting relationship tuple changes from the changes endpoint. So what's left to do? We need to, again, finalize the SDK's API structure. Critically, of course, I got to build out the unit integration tests. I'm a big fan of the PEST framework, so I'm going to be building it against that. And ideally, I'd love to see integrations for plug and play with Laravel and Symfony. Those both have really great APIs for implementing authorization seamlessly. So I'd like to piggyback off those and just say, you know, if you want to use FGA for that, plug this in, boom, it works. So yeah, it's available right now. If you'd like to install it, just specify the dev main branch until get a point release out. But yeah, again, would love your feedback, and any contributions are most welcome to getting this thing, you know, production ready. Let's see. Do we have any questions?
Andres had a question like about are there any fans? I'm not gonna say or bigger fans than Evan is because there's no bigger fan, but are any PHP fans in the house?
PHP is a dirty word in a lot of developer communities. Not well earned. I change minds on that.
This is everyone's time to try the SDK, and like once you see how much nicer it is than other SDKs, you'll be like, oh, why don't we use PHP everywhere? So this is a chance. Thank you so much, Evan, and
no problem.
Thanks for working on this. And like for everyone else, we know like we have a lot of passionate like people in the Rust community and also in the Elixir community. If you have your own SDK and like you're building it, even if we're not having it as an official OpenFGA SDK, if it's good enough, do come here, do demo it, do share it. Other folks would definitely be happy with that. So yeah, SDKs, yay.
And also for for people who want to work on SDKs, so we have a few ones. I think there are 5, like in the, because it's the one we currently have capacity to maintain. And but if someone is writing a new one and they want to kind of be part of the OpenFGA community and kind of commit to maintain it, we'll be very welcome of that. We kind of help you to understand what is kind of the level of quality we expect from an official SDK, and you can help us drive it and own it. So it's a good opportunity if you want to participate in the OpenFGA community more officially and maintain an SDK that we still don't support. Like candidates there are kind of Rust, Ruby, PHP. Those are the ones we've seen more people. Elixir, with people creating in GitHub, but just running the OpenFGA generator. But yeah, we do have a few more things besides that, like for example, writing tests that could be useful if someone wants to do that and contribute that to the OpenFGA community.
And to add to what Andres said, like if you feel like you're very passionate about one of our existing SDKs and you want to help, like, oh, I want to have these features, and there's so much, there's always so much work to do. So like, do talk to us. If you're willing to be committed, we're willing to onboard like more maintainers and have you help us be a co-maintainer on this. So whether it's an existing SDK, existing library, or a new one, this is open source. Join us. Okay, so where are we on our planning? Right now, you've seen us. We've released the batch check SDK, so that's no longer in progress. That's released, but we're still working on the SDK support. So that's gonna come up soon. We know a few of you are excited for the streamed list objects. So we've supported streamed list objects from when it was released on the API, but there was not a lot of people asking for the SDK, so we never built that. We're starting to see some people like asking for this. So we're starting to work on soon, starting with the Python SDK. If you have a need for streamed list objects, do let us know. Like what SDK do you want it, and how do you intend to work it? Do you intend to consume the streamed version in your app, or do you expect the SDK to stream and just give you the responses in a single callback? So whichever you choose, do let us know, and which SDK you would like. Performance improvements for OpenFGA. I mean, there's not much to talk about there. And there's a lot to talk about there. So you're just going to constantly be seeing us having it in progress. I don't know if we'll ever move this to done. Maybe once we've done a lot of substantial and we're pausing for a bit. I don't know. But expect this to be there for a while. And I mean, you're already seeing the improvements with rolling out. Right now, a lot of them are experimental. Once they're not, maybe we'd start another experimental roadmap item for performance improvement.
A couple of comments there. First is that, yeah, they are still in experimental in OpenFGA. We've been using those in our hosted version of the product, so we are kind of experimenting with those and learning. But I expect that the experimental flag will be removed from some of those improvements relatively soon, so it will be enabled by default. And then we've been mostly focused on check up to now, and we'll start focusing more on list objects pretty soon. So you're also going to be seeing improvements in performance for list objects too. In some scenarios, the improvements in check were pretty dramatic. And so once everything is non-experimental, you should see a significant impact in the latency numbers you have for OpenFGA.
Thanks, Andres. And like one other thing in progress, search with permissions. It's been on like all of you have been asking about search with permissions since OpenFGA's incarnation. And it's definitely one of the biggest topics in this field. So we're still focusing on it. We're doing a lot of POCs, a lot of demos, a lot of to try to see what is something that would work for us and work for whoever's consuming this in a way that's not too hard to maintain or too like in a way that works basically. So expect like over the coming months to hear more news and more demos from this. You've seen Joshua demo some aspects of this in past calls. And next we have improved filtering for the read API. Again, that's a very highly used, highly asked for use case. We want the audit like improve it on audit logs, and we do want to offer like caching on the SDKs. You can right now cache yourself. Additionally, the OpenFGA has caching built in, but caching on the SDKs help you have an additional cache layer, like at the edge, basically in your app rather than over the wire. Anyone has any comments on the roadmap, or we can go ahead? Okay, well, go ahead. Community news. Oh, sorry, Eric, you have
Yes, sorry, a bit late with the raising hand. Question about the performance improvements of the ticket 61. I noticed that there is a lot of chattiness between the OpenFGA and the PostgreSQL. And sometimes there's so much queries or requests sent that is basically saturating the available connections and is basically responding with too many clients. Sorry, I'm gonna error out. Is gonna be addressed with one of the is it gonna be one of the things addressed with the 61?
Partially, I would say, because 61 or at least the work we have for it right now is around how do we minimize and prioritize what's going to the DB, like the calls. So it doesn't deal with Postgres specifically, but it is working on improving like the queries we send and all that.
Okay.
That said, if you have different suggestions, or you if while you're testing it you find somewhere where we can do better specifically for Postgres or whatever MySQL, do like either open up or start a ticket and let us know your findings. We'd love to take that on.
In general, you shouldn't see any scenario where we consume all the connections. So that is, I don't know if you check the documentation we have of how the best way to configure OpenFGA and Postgres connections in a way that play well together, right? And if you hadn't, please check that, right? And if you still see an issue with Postgres and connections, let us know, because it shouldn't be the case. Right?
Okay, yeah, I'm still playing with the options on the Postgres and the OpenFGA. I didn't check with that experimental flag for the optimizing the checks. I will enable that flag and see how it goes. Okay, thank you. And by the way, great product. I really like. I started about a week ago. It was so easy to set up the authorization model with the modules. Great work, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
But thank you for the feedback. And yeah, like most of the team are here on the call, so they all heard that. So thank you so much. And just another point is like, even though the team is doing a lot of this work, we are getting a lot of community contributions. So thank you for people contributing actively to the code base, or whether through feature requests, tests, or blog posts, or whatever. Like it, like all that sort helps. Talking about community, that brings us to the community news. Here you'll see Andres at KubeCon. Andres, do you want to talk about KubeCon a bit? About your experience there?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, KubeCon was a lot of fun. We had a kiosk in the Project Pavilion area. Actually, I'm there with Pauline Jamin. She's an engineer in Agicap, which is a French company that has been using OpenFGA for a while. And she was very kind and was there with me in the kiosk, answering questions to people who were asking and learning about OpenFGA. And we also participated in a couple of other presentations. The one that was pretty interesting about comparing different approaches for policy and policy engines. So you can Google about it or find the links in our newsletters, and there's the recording there. And we also had a lightning talk, where a 5-minute talk to talk about FGA and the progress we've made in the project in the last few months. So that was very good. It was in Salt Lake City. Next time is going to be in London. So hopefully I will also be there too. And if you are close to London, we can chat about OpenFGA there.
And like honestly, I have to say, Pauline and Jace are two of the community members who keep showing up at like meeting us at events and are helping us like impromptu answer questions about their usages and their productions. And there's a lot of insight to be taken from what they have to say, because like they've been through a lot of this journey of taking OpenFGA all the way to productions and dealing with what does that mean, the scale and the choices that have to be made. So yeah, thank you to both Jace, Pauline. Thank you so much. Another thing is thank you to the OpenFGA team. We had an offsite in Chicago. So here you can see the team. As far as I can see, everyone's smiling. So it seems everyone was happy with the offsite. We don't get to meet each other in physically a lot. So whenever we do, like it's a good way to catch up and like and talk, whether about OpenFGA or just about life. So yay. Another thing, OpenFGA finally over 3,000. I can't wait to say the over 9,000, but for now, over 3,000. Thank you for all the people who have started us. And if you haven't yet, do so. Get your friends, your family members, children, aunts, everyone. Send those spammy WhatsApp messages. Good morning. Did you start OpenFGA? So yeah, so thank you everyone. And hopefully soon we'll be with the 4,000. Thank you.
So yeah, Gerlin, I expect now to see a lot of stars from your co-workers at Docker. So
that should be made as like a promotion case. Did you start OpenFGA? No promotion for you. Also, we have our page on LinkedIn. So yeah, feel free to follow it. It's one of our many community places we post. So whether on LinkedIn, on Twitter/X, or anywhere else, you can find us on openfga.dev/community. You can find links to all of them. And yeah, if you are using OpenFGA, please add yourself and add your use case to the adopters files. It would help us. It will help other people understand how other people use OpenFGA. So please do so. Like just submit a PR, and we can merge it. All right, that brings us to our QA time. We don't. If anyone has any questions, we're available. Otherwise, if you don't want to chat now, we're always available on Slack. Tyler.
Yeah. Hi. So I missed, excuse me. I missed the intros section. I had to double meet, but I did want to ask if you all had worked with any U.S. government agencies before, because I'm currently a contractor for one, and I'm trying to introduce OpenFGA into an application that we're working on. But we have now hit a bureaucracy paperwork stage, and I'm just wondering if you all had any experience with that previously.
Yeah, so I guess like this cannot be a coincidence, but we got an email like recently from a U.S. government agents asking about some paperwork, basically the country origin of the people contributing to FGA and things like that. And so we have some experience. If you need help, you can contact us directly, right? And and we can just ping me in the CNCF Slack channel, and we can have a conversation. And but yeah, so we'd love to help, of course. The more users and the better for us. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, that message might have been from the paperwork that we started on my side. So
yeah,
good to hear.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thank you.
There's Sam. Do you?
Hey, yeah. Sorry I was a little late today. Thanks y'all for the demos and the content that I caught up with, or that I actually caught. I work at Read AI, and we have OpenFGA in our authorization pipeline. So we've been using it for quite a while. I can't claim that I implemented it, but I recently joined, and I'm now maintaining it and working on it, which has been going quite well. As you can imagine, the longer you have an authorization model, the more you want to change things over time. We're starting to kind of look at it and like trying to simplify some stuff. Of course, still keeping OpenFGA, but trying to reduce the number of tuples and just like reducing complexity a little bit, so it's a little easier to evangelize to other coworkers, so people know how to kind of use authorization throughout our stack. So I think ultimately we're going to need to do a lot of like tuple deletion or tuple migration to other tuples, and I'm kind of curious if there's like good docs or good kind of like use cases out there, or not use cases, case studies out there of how migrations have happened successfully in the past, and if we need to like start looking at doing database like direct database updates, or if we want to use SDKs and kind of do things piecemeal over time. Yeah.
That's honestly a good question, because yeah, it's one of the things that not a lot of people ask early enough, but as they get to use the product, they'll get to encounter it more and more. I'm not going to talk about best practices, but I can say some. I think you've seen probably some of our documentation around migration, around ensuring that you don't introduce breaking changes without making sure all your SDKs have moved. So using the model IDs properly is definitely a big way there. But I'll open it for other folks to answer maybe about their experience or their thoughts.
So in any case, the answer, Sam, is we don't have experience with large migration for tuples ourselves, right? And maybe it's a good question to ask in the channel and see if someone has gone through that. But I'd love to be close to what you're doing and learn more about the problem you have, because of course that's an area where we want to help as much as we can, right? So if we understand the concrete problem you have, we have some features in the roadmap that will simplify some use case, like delete all the tuples that are not valid based on a specific model or things like that.
Right.
But I think I'd love to learn more. So also ping me if you want in this Slack channel, and I'd love to meet and see the issues you're having and see how we can help.
Definitely, yeah. I'll put together kind of just a little context doc and share it with y'all. We, for what it's worth, we do use the like model ID like forward. As we add to the model, we update model IDs and update our services, of course, and that works super well. So that was very well thought out on y'all's end. So now we're getting to the point where it's like, how do we make breaking changes and kind of work through those effectively? So thank you.
I'll drop the link here for other people following around model migrations. Like this here might be useful. There's a few pages around that. Of course, like these are not exhaustive, but may be helpful in terms of like, where do we start?
I guess maybe a more pointed question is there ever a case where someone would go in and write, like we have Postgres backing our stuff. Would anyone ever write a direct update to Postgres? Or is that super dangerous territory?
Thank you I wanted to reply that and forgot. Yes, we would say, like, at least I would recommend not, because it has repercussions. So deleting tuples and not deleting the appropriate or not writing the appropriate change log, if you ever need to reconstruct, you now have a something that's not right. Like you can, like, if you take the proper precautions and you make sure you're always understanding what the OpenFGA is doing under the hood, because we may update the server, like how we store things may different. We have a few things for Postgres specifically where we we split up the tuple. So these things may change and it's very risky to depend on them.
Yep.
Like that's
from the other point of view is if it's something you want to do once, right? Like in a specific migration, that those things that Ragged are mentioning are less relevant. But on the other hand, we do have this change log that has all the changes that you're making. And if you're relying on that feature and you're updating your database manually, right? Yeah, your changelog is going to be out of date, right? So unless you apply all the changes in the changelog, right? So that will imply if you start making changes directly, it's likely that you won't be able to use the changelog in the future. That's a trade-off you can make, right? And so ideally, in the best world, yeah, you wouldn't do it. I understand that some use cases where I want to delete a lot of data very quickly, maybe way simpler to do that than doing it in other ways, right? So it's a trade-off, but in general, yeah, I would expect you to not to do it, but
makes sense. The fact that I was
you
nervous asking that question meant it probably wasn't the right thing to do.
I mean,
I've taken a lot of your
asking
time,
is
so
it's fine. Yeah, Gurleen.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just wanted to pitch in to say that we do that a lot. We write directly to the database and delete from the database a lot. I've just like backfilled 13 tuples yesterday, but we do take care of the changelog as well. Like we got into the database, look what tables you're changing. It's like we have everything under control for now. But yeah, it's possible. We have
awesome
migrated to FGA directly inserting into the database.
Let us know also, Gurleen. Actually, we can discuss that in the Slack channel too. Is when are you doing that, right? Because those are so I can imagine some of the reasons you're doing it, but that is also in to validate that and see if how can we improve the product so you don't need to do it.
Sure.
I would say
Eric.
also. Sorry, yeah.
Just not related to that. So maybe once with the migration topic, I'll ask my question.
I just wanted to add a note for us, the team, considering like even whether we want it or not, some people are depending on DB migrations. We probably would need to add to the changelog, like every time we change something in how we're interacting with the DB. Just even though it's not an exposed API, some people are relying on it. So I think Gurleen would be a way easier to update without and like where you can read and see what we did rather than suddenly things are breaking and you don't know why.
Yeah, if you can document, although people should not be using it, but in some cases you need to write directly to the DB. If you can document that on the OpenFGA website, like in extreme cases you need to do this, these are the steps that you should follow, or these are the tables that you should update.
Okay, So the question I have, and it might be loaded, and I apologize for that. OpenFGA, based on the Zanzibar, that's being relationship-based access control. As a backend, we have the Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, the memory, and so on. Are there any plans to utilize the graph databases, which might be more performant for the task that OpenFGA is providing?
So that is something we evaluated when we started with the project. The main challenge with that is that if you see the way FGA works is that you define the graph in the language, right, in the DSL. And if you use a graph database, that is this database schema. You end up modeling your database with that graph, right? So every change in the model is a database migration in the underlying database. And so if you want to build a product that is generic and you can use for multiple customers and whatever, having a way to have a schema per store, right, is very, and per version of the model, that doesn't work, right? So I would say if you want to implement yourself an authorization system for your specific use case, and you want to use a graph database for that, that might work, right? Because you can build the schema for you, you can manage the schema migrations yourself, right? It's a very specific schema for your use case, right? And then, of course, you need to have all the tooling and everything we have in FGA for that scenario, but it's just you decide to implement it that way, right? Yeah, but that's why we decided not to pick a graph database.
Okay, it makes sense. Thank you for explanation. I was looking at the Falcor DB kind of initially, but there is some resistance into graph databases, so that's why I went at taking the step at the OpenFGA. Thank you, Andres.
That said, if you ever do try it, if you want to take a shot about what does it look like, we would love to know your findings, and like I'm sure other people in the community would like love to see what you end up doing with them.
Thank you.
Sorry all for going over time. I'm gonna open the final call for any questions before we call it a day. Thank you all for being conscious of each other's time. Thank you for coming. Sorry, Andres, do you want to do the? So thank you all for coming. Thank you for honestly being with us on this amazing year we've had so far. And like happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Armenian Christmas to follow, and we'll see you next year. Thank you so much and have a good day.